Good morning.
Good morning.
I just apologize. I have a hoarse throat today, so the sound quality is not going to be as good as usual. So today's gospel reading is taken from the Gospel of Luke. And Jesus gives his major sermon, a homily. And it's called the Sermon on the Plain. In the Gospel of Matthew, of course, we know it as the Sermon on the Mount. And today, Jesus chooses a subject that is probably the most challenging one to embrace and to live as followers of Christ. He is talking about loving, and not just the people who love us back, who like us, who applaud us, but loving everyone. Even people whom we may judge difficult to love in some ways, and maybe for good reasons. Jesus calls all of us to love our enemies as well. This is what he has to say. Love your enemies and do good to them. Do to others as you would have them do to you. For if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Now it is true that loving people who love us back is relatively easy. Everyone can do it, and in fact, we do it all the time. But loving people in your life, a family member, a co-worker, a student at your school, a neighbor, whose actions aren't exactly lovable, it's not that easy. I mean, we all struggle with this. It's a challenge. Now, this teaching was probably as controversial in the time of Jesus as it is today. How do we even begin to live it? Where do we start? Now, it's interesting that most likely nobody expected Jesus to say what he said. Jesus, I can imagine, surprised many by putting these two words together, love and enemy, next to each other. In the world in which, and it was a Greco-Roman world, in which you were expected to help your friends, but to harm your enemies. That was the expectation. That was the norm. In literature and in philosophy. But this tells you that God often invites us to do something we would never expect, something that may go against a popular way of thinking. Now, what is very important to remember is that the word to love, agape, is not about having a feeling of love toward people you may regard as your enemies. Rather, it is an invitation to try to act lovingly toward everyone, even people who might have done something wrong. So it's about doing good, not so much feeling good. Although our love for others will ultimately bring about peace and joy in our lives. See, that's why Jesus says, do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. It's about doing. The late Father Dan Harrington, a wonderful Jesuit priest and a scholar of the Bible and the New Testament in particular, who taught at Boston College for many, many years, he used to tell us, and we were always joking that we tried to take as many classes with Dan as possible. We used to joke that, we are majoring at Dan Harrington. That was our major, And he was a wonderful, bright man. He used to say to us all the time that the point of Jesus' teaching here is basically to break the cycle of violence, to break the cycle of retribution, to break the cycle of vengeance, of just going back and forth. That's the point. So it is an invitation to grow from only loving people who love us to loving all people, including people who are not easy to love, by trying to act lovingly toward them. Now Jesus continues and gives us some other examples of what it means to love your enemies. He says, stop judging and you will not be judged. Stop condemning and you will not be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven. Father Richard Raw was once asked, if you were to give one piece of advice to someone, what would that advice be? And without hesitation, he said 3 words: do not judge. I believe that deep down, we all wish we never had a desire to judge others. Life would be so much easier, less heavy. And I think a good way to start practicing Jesus' teaching is to try every day to judge less. Every day. When people disagree with you. Someone once said something that I believe can help us to have less judgmental attitude in our lives. That person said this: everyone is more than the worst thing he or she has done in life. Everyone has a story. There's always more. And to be able to see that more in the other person, maybe is exactly what Jesus means when he says, do not judge, do not condemn, forgive. There's always more. And that's exactly how God sees you and me and others. God always sees more. And God calls us to imitate Him, His attitude, and His way of loving. And Jesus knows that. That's why He says, be merciful, just as your Father is merciful.
Don't forget to follow St. Patrick's on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube. And please join us for any of our live stream masses this weekend. Details are below in the description. God bless you.
Like burning incense, O Lord, let my prayer rise up to you. Like burning incense, O Lord, let my prayer rise up to